What is going on, everybody, and welcome back into ByerlyStudios. I am super excited for this video. It is video number 2 in the Goliath Birdeater Tarantula diorama that we are building for another amazing artist and creator. That being Yvonne Hunt over at Kirsten Conjured. Her TikTok link will be in the description below. Make sure you go check out her amazing tumblers and some of the items she also creates, because she is an amazing creator in her own right. So this is video number 2. In this video, we are going to be creating the actual base for us to start building up the actual sculpture on. So I've already got the actual wood base, which is a pine base. Already got it stained and ready to go in an American walnut. Here is a before picture of that. There's that pine color, and this is a after picture, that beautiful, rich American walnut, and I do have that clear coated also, just to give it a nice, good sheen. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump over to the props on saw here, and we're going to cut up some XPS, and then we're probably going to go ahead and use some 3M Super 77 to attach all of those foam boards together. We're probably going to go about 3 boards high, that way I can get the height that I want, and then we'll kind of run through the process. We're also going to probably run some wires through it, because I may be experimenting with the idea of also building out a little bit of a mesh texture of wire around the existing foam before I start to lay in some awesome air dry clay. The air dry clay that we're going to be using in video number 3 of this series will be DOS. I'm super excited. I ordered a few blocks of these and I ordered white for that, so we'll be getting to that very soon. So that will be video number 3, so stay tuned for that. Alright, so let's jump over to the props on saw here, and we'll just go ahead and start cutting up the XPS foam into the overall dimensions that we need to build up those layers, so that we can kind of sculpt those out with the hot wire tools later on in this video. Let's get to it, guys.
Alright, so let's jump straight into the content here, and I start off this process by just getting some general measurements of my board here. Let's just say that the foam for the most part is going to roughly be 13 inches by 10 inches with a few centimeters cut off. Let's just say that. So I'm just going to use just a metal ruler here, and I'm going to go ahead and make my marks. And what we're going to do is we're going to cut out the very first piece of foam. I'm going to make this foam base probably about 3 tiers high in total before we go into the actual hot wire sculpting process. So I'm just taking general measurements here, and then after we get the first one cut out here, we will use that as a reference to make the other 2. Alright, with the measurements done, we're going to jump over to the props on saw here, and we're going to cut out the very first panel here. Now, I'm not going out of my way to make sure that this is a straight line, because we're going to carve up the foam to make it look like kind of like a rock formation. In the later portion of this video here, I really don't care if it has a jagged edge. So we're going to round the edges off right there in the corners, just to kind of smooth them off a little bit. And then we're going to use this to lay on top of it to make the other 2. So I just use that as a stencil, traced them out here, and we're going to continue working the board around. You can see I got some resistance there. That is actually it burning through the label sticker on the back of the foam board. So although the props on saw kind of resists there, it does give way, and I'm able to cut through that. It's amazing what a hot wire cutter can do with the foam that you're cutting, you know. It's very cool. As you can see there, just moving consistently, if you slow down, it can kind of burn a hole in the foam. Now there's a nail sticking up on the bottom of the board. I didn't want that on the table here, so I put a piece of foam under that. And I'm just going to kind of layer these in how I would probably want them to be layered on the actual stain board here. We're going to make sure we sculpt these in the proper way. And then this is kind of what it looks like, just stacked up there on the table. As you can see in the background there, I also have all of these foams cut out for the foam test we're going to do. So if you haven't checked that out, make sure you do so. I'll link it above.
Alright guys, so we're back over here at my workstation here, and I've got all the boards here, including the actual base. So as you can see here, it's great condition, but I'll probably go ahead and wrap this with some saran wrap, so that way it doesn't get damaged in any way. I don't know yet. I don't think I'm gonna attach these to this board quite yet. I think I'm gonna go ahead and just kind of like, you know, block them in the way that I want to, and then I'll apply them after. That way if I were to sand the edges of these, or if I want to scuff something up, my X-Acto knife or my blade doesn't hit my nice stained board or anything like that. So I might do that, we'll see. I might go ahead and apply the first layer, but I need to go ahead and attach these together so that I can kind of sculpt these with the hot wire carving set. So what I want to do is I want to make sure that it has a high to low downgrade. It's going to have a water feature. It's going to have an indentation for the log to sit on, as you can see from that little last video there, or that picture. So I want to make sure it has a good shape to it. So I think I might go ahead and apply it, and I might just saran wrap the edges of it. So like the saran wrap, but just barely tucks underneath the edge of this, so that when I come in with paint, I can just literally just peel that saran wrap up and around the edge. I don't want to use painter's tape. I like saran wrap sometimes, because I can roll that over to the bottom. It kind of holds the shape of the item. That way it protects the bottom as I'm sliding it around on my work surface or putting it on the rotation thing to turn it. So let's go ahead. I also think that I may introduce some wire mesh in particular places to kind of add a little bit of strength to this. Like if I want the clay, the air dry clay, to kind of come out and away from it, I may create like a wire mesh extension piece there, so it has a little bit extra meat to hang on, that clay to hang on to. So I may go ahead and run a few pieces of wire through this, and if I don't need them, then I'll just clip them smooth and then just clay over them. We'll see. During the same process, I'm cutting all my foam at the same time. We're also about to do the foam experiment, where I'm gonna try to get the air dry clay to stick to like a number of types of styrofoam and XPS. And if it does not stick the way that I like for it to stick, then I may change things up a little bit, try some different methods. And then the worst case scenario is I'm gonna build a wire mesh system to go over this, so that clay really does have something to grab onto. I know you can carve this like rock and dirt texture, you know, the formations. I don't want to do that for this project. I know that I can. I want to sculpt it. That's really what I want to do. I want to sculpt it out of clay. And I don't want it to be one solid brick of clay. You get what I'm saying? So I'm not saying that I won't carve XPS and foam into the shapes of clay for rocks for projects. It's just not what I want for this one, right? So we're gonna go ahead and jump in. I'm gonna go ahead and run some wires through these layers here. Not the top layer. We're not gonna do the top layer. We're not gonna do top layer. We're just gonna run some wires down. I think just the bottom one. I think the bottom will be just fine, and we'll make those pretty long, and I'll wrap those up and like put them right there so that they're just there in case I do need them. I just want to go ahead and get this thing put together, drying. Put some weights on top of it so it can be setting and ready to go. So let me go ahead and get that going here. We're gonna use the 3M Super 77 to put that onto the board here, and then attach all of these together. And then once it's all cured and I know it's truly set up properly, maybe a day or so, I'll begin the process of actually carving it away and sculpting it into the formation for the base that I would like. Does that make sense? All right, let's get to it, guys.
All right, so we're going to jump into this. I decided to go ahead and apply this to the actual stained board here, and we're just going to run with it. I do think that when I go into the sculpting and the painting process, I still will apply either painter's tape or some plastic wrap to the actual stained board to keep it from getting damaged. So I've just went ahead and used the Super 77 to apply the adhesive to the actual foam, and then we're just kind of pressing that down onto the actual stained piece of wood that we have here. I decided to go ahead and add the wire strands in between the foam. So during this process, I'm not going to jump the gun and get ahead of myself, but at this stage in time, I really wanted to see how and if I could do this, so that if I wanted to extend the air dry clay out and away from the foam object, I could build up a wire mesh, and I could use these strands to kind of tighten it down and kind of hold the wire mesh into place while I get the air dry clay around it. So this is me just kind of layering these into these like little stencil cuts that I had made with the hot wire tool, just to give me an idea where I wanted those to be. And it would have been pretty strong overall. So you're going to go ahead and just lay those in place, and then I would apply the next layer of adhesive. Make sure you always make sure that you put enough adhesive around the edges and the corners. Those are the weakest portions sometimes, and you got to make sure that you apply the pressure to those outside corners as well as the end, so you don't get any separation on the outside. So there's those wires sticking through there. I'll let out that Tupperware bin sit on top of there, and it is going to cure for a few hours before I remove those.
So I hope y'all enjoyed the first little half of this video here. Now I'm trying to section these up just so they're nice, neat, and organized. And here's that wood base here. It looks absolutely phenomenal. And I did pick the pretty side to kind of face forward. As you can see there, we got those wires through the middle here. If I don't need those, then I'll go ahead and clip those off. During this same process here, I'm also going ahead and I'm making the video to answer my own question. Can I get air dry clay to attach to foam, whether it be styrofoam of any different degree or texture, or an XPS foam? So definitely check out that. It'll be in the tips and tricks playlist, not in this one individually, so it's a separate video, but it is kind of part of this in a way. This is where I'm answering those questions. So awesome stuff. We went about 3 tiers high, and then we're going to start going ahead and sculpting this out into the overall general shape that we need, so then we can start to build up those clay layers, which I really want to detail to bring out a lot of the rock texture and things like that. So this is where it is right now. Let's go ahead and get our hot wire tool set, and we're going to go ahead and start slowly carving this away. Now also remember, during this process, I'm going to be referencing over and over again the general shape of our log here. Now I haven't cut these apart yet to make the overall dingy, dirty, rotted log that we're going to have during this process, but it's going to be kind of set into the actual foam board just a little bit, and if I need to build up particular areas during the process, I can do that with the air dry clay. That's not a problem. So what we're going to do is we're going to sculpt it out so that we can actually sit this a little bit down into it, so it looks like the rotting log is really settling down into the existing dirt or the ecosystem that we're trying to build. And then the actual Birdeater Tarantula will be actually on top of the log partially, and then also partially hanging off to the front portion of the diorama. So let's go ahead and get to it. We're going to get the cutting tools here, and we'll get to sculpting.
Alright, so here we are. We have the foam board already adhesive. I've wrapped up those wire strands and got them sitting off to the side. And during this entire process, I am still, again, doing the foam and air dry clay test. We're using a DOS air dry clay to kind of test to see if it can attach to foam in an efficient manner. And here's our actual hot wire kit. A lot of these tools are the thicker gauge tools because they don't have the 2 contacts to the actual heating element. But I really don't like these too much, but they're a necessity if you want to cut little fine details in it, in sharp angles, as opposed to the larger art size cutters that I'll probably use towards the end of this portion of the process to cut off larger swaths of the foam itself. So this is just a little bit of a process. Always protect yourself, guys. I have a box fan in behind me. I'm working out in the shed. I have all my windows open, and I'm also wearing a mask also. So if you're in a compressed area, enclosed area with no ventilation, protect yourself, guys. This stuff is not good for your lungs when it's burning like this. Yes, when you're using the fine mesh wire cutters, it's not as bad, but these thicker types of foam cutters really do burn the foam. It's releasing that into the air, so just remember that. It's not good for your lungs, it's not good for your body. Don't fool yourself, protect yourself. So either A, do it outside where you're completely ventilated, or make sure you wear a respirator of some sort. Don't risk your health when it comes to stuff like this, because you may have you may be all right today, but a year from now, 2 years from now, you could develop problems you do not know, or you could wake up the next morning and you could feel like your lungs are hardening for all you know. So just protect yourself, guys. Always work safely no matter what you do. As you can see here, there was some separation between the foam layers. The Super 77 actually kind of burned and melted the foam a little bit. I know that Black Magic Craft had used this in a test. He did a smaller piece of foam block, and it gave a different result than this. It may have been because he had a smaller quantity and I have such a large piece here, and I had more overall contact between the foam, and I did have to spray quite a bit of that on there just because I wanted to get the adhesion that I was looking for. So I'm just using this, and I'm scraping and cutting away the clay. Let the foam cutter do the job for you. Don't go overly crazy and bend up your wires here. Let the foam cutter do its job, but you don't also want it to sit there because then it just melts instead of cuts. I don't want it to melt. I just want it to kind of burn it away, and then I can chip it off. Here I'm switching over to the fine mesh cutter here. Because it is a large arc and it is flat and not at an angle, you do have to kind of cut it at the correct angles to kind of be able to remove stuff. So although it's not as versatile in cutting in close radiuses, it does pretty good. So you kind of have to go back to the actual larger conductor here to cut, like, smaller pieces like this before you can come in with the actual larger arc hot wire cutter to cut away larger pieces. But the finer mesh wire does cut so much smoother, so much easier than this. Because of the gauge of the wire, it heats up quite a bit more, and it's smaller, it doesn't create as much resistance when it's burning through the foam. And I'll continuously go back to this here. You can see it glowing there in the camera. Isn't that so cool? I'm going out of my way just to make sure that it has general texture all the way around. It's my hypothesis that the more surface area is scuffed up and roughed up, the better overall the air dry clay is going to attach to the foam of any type.
Alright everybody, so we're already back inside the indoor studio here, and we're going to begin the process in this next video of adding clay to this sculpted foam. So as you can see here, it is completely sculpted out. I've got the little cliffs carved in, I've got the water feature effect, and I left a little bit of void around the back side as well. And then we also have this portion here where it's going to have a divot for that rotting log to sit down into. Now you can also see that here there's a lot of voids between the pieces of foam. Although I did use Super 77 3M to attach these pieces of foam, it did decay the foam some between the two layers. So I guess in some areas it didn't give full adhesion. So just be aware that if you're using Super 77, the smaller the piece, probably the better the contact. But it's holding steady, and I have no doubts that it's going to do its job. Now is the process of adding the actual air dry clay to the exterior of this. You can also notice that I did remove all of the wire pieces that went through. I don't feel like they're necessary. If I wanted to really project it far away from the actual base, then I would probably leave those in and add some wire mesh to it before I apply the air dry clay. But otherwise, I'm really happy with how it turned out, and we're going to go ahead and jump into the next video where we're going to add air dry clay to this and texture it in the form of rock and dirt, so that way we can go over it with our substrates and our paints after in maybe video 3. So I appreciate everything you do. I appreciate you watching the video, and I hope you enjoyed the overall process of just layering and then sculpting the foam into the general shape that we need. And then we'll see you in video number 3. Later, guys.
Thank you for watching. Check out all of these awesome videos.